So I'm reading this book, Exodus by Leon Uris, and I'm doing my best to understand what's happening so far. So let's start with the summary. Exodus is about Jewish people living on Cyprus, but they're living on Cyprus at a time where there's conflict between the Jews and the Muslims who live in the area. Now the Muslims come from Turkey and are trying to basically make Cyprus a more Muslim place. Now we all know how that turns out in the end. Eventually Cyprus becomes divided between Cyprus and northern Cyprus, but there's still a great amount of conflict in the area in the day. So what they decide to do is take several ships that are occupied by Jewish people and then take them to the land that will soon be Israel but is currently Palestine, and name this ship the Exodus because it takes them from a Muslim-occupied territory to another Muslim-occupied territory which they want to change into become a Jewish state. Now, then the book shifts and talks about the formation of Ari ben Canaan and Barak ben Canaan, who since the late 19th century have fled Russia, which has become hostile towards Jews, and eventually, after growing up and spending several years on foot, going from Russia, which is now anti-Jew, to what is Palestine at that time, and eventually help our friends from chapter 1 go into Palestine, which will soon be called Israel. But before that, they form a settlement there for Jewish people and eventually go further and further out in settling various parts of the random land into what will become the Jewish state. Now, eventually, though, they are able to get the help of several nations at the formation of the United Nations, and the United Nations has enough friends to make Israel, what is now Israel over Palestine, a member of the United Nations. Now, eventually this leads to a lot of conflict in the area. You see the United Kingdom, which is full of anti-Semitic peoples, and because of their allegiance to the Palestinians, the British people and the Palestinians conflict with the Americans, who are pro-Zionist, eventually conflict with the Americans and the Jews who want to form Israel. And eventually we all know how this ends. Eventually the Americans and the what's going to become the Israelis win the conflict over the British and Palestinian peoples. So we now have Israel formed, and Israel's its state to this day, all a result of what the Jews and Americans were able to do. So let's look at what happens in Exodus. There are several books into which Exodus, the book, is divided. So in book 1, we experience the Jews who are living in Cyprus. So as history tells us, there's a Turkish Muslim north and a Greek Christian south to the bottom of Cyprus, to the south. Now, looking at these divisions, even though the Muslim north and the Christian south, you'd think that religion would be at peace more there, so the Jews could stay there. That is not the case, and eventually the Jews take several boats and sail off to Palestine. Now this tells us that the Jews are basically persecuted everywhere and have no choice but to all group together in another land where they can better defend themselves. And this is also reinforced in the second book, where we see two two Jewish men walk off to Palestine. Yes, walk, and trying to escape the persecution that is occurring against them in Russia. And the fact that many Jews are forming, gathering in Palestine, shows that the Jewish people, regardless of their persecution everywhere, are going to form a nation in what is Palestine. They do this by buying off several parts of the land, which is expressed in Book 3. The Jews of many nations all group together in Palestine, and little by little they purchase parts of the land formerly known as Palestine. They buy off many parts of that land and accommodate themselves to live in these areas where they can group together, form together, and express their religion in ways that they like. Now, eventually this grows to the Jews buy off so much land that they're able to go to the United Nations and have several nations express their desire to form the State of Israel out of what is Palestine beforehand. So they are able and successful to get enough troops to go to Palestine and form their own State of Israel, thanks to the desire of other nations. But this desire to form the other nations is not suitable for the Britons, which are allied with the Palestinians and the overall Arabs. The overall Arabs themselves allied with Germany in World War II, although they didn't fight in World War II. They sided with the Germans, and so the Britons and the Nazi-sided Arabs try to fight the Palestinians out. But however, the Americans come into what is Palestine and fight against the British and the what was the Palestinians, and succeed and form the nation of Israel. This formation and this book's expressing of formation shows you how important religion is in forming the state. Religion ultimately is what formed the state, and the glory of forming that religion is what led the Jews and the Americans against the Britons and the Arabs. So ultimately, religion makes you a greater man, and I think that is the point of the book, even though it's not what I think. It is the point of the book.